Thanks everyone for joining. I'm from a software company called Dataiku, and if you heard Leanne's discussion this morning, Leanne's not a customer of Dataiku, but our software just helps with that technical implementation challenge so that you can get on to the really hard stuff of how you build a data science team culture and embed it in your organization. So if you want to learn how we contribute to that, come and talk to us on the stand after lunch. I'm going to talk about something different. What I want to share is just some thoughts, experience, recommendations for those of you trying to make digital transformation successful about how to think about data in that journey. So I'll try to get through my talking, probably going to ask you some questions throughout. First question, does anyone know why I might have said hero and villain? Does anyone have a story of data being a hero in their digital transformation? More of my stories are about the villain side, but if anyone wants to share and get us rolling, anyone seen it done particularly well and data was one of the reasons, or had a challenge and when you did the forensics afterwards you found that something about data was not right and that might be why the digital transformation didn't work so well? Tough crowd. Okay. I'm not going to start asking. Oh, yes! I had to say tough crowd and then someone volunteered.
Yeah, just I want to tell about Google. So Google have basically the same business model as IBM in 30s, like IBM and Holocaust. So it's sorting people. And for example, in the war in Ukraine, you can see that when Putin came and take some territory, he already have all the list of people whom he want to catch and so on. So it's vicious, very vicious, this like.
Cool. That's one of the more painful things that you could say. So that's a great example. My own experience reflecting on my time being a data scientist, a data science team leader, data leader, embedded in digital transformation efforts, is that sometimes they don't go well. And one of the reasons is this. Is this shocking to anyone? Has anyone ever experienced that in the work of digital transformation, sometimes forces act on you and push you towards, we need the app to look good so the board renew our budget. We need the app to look good. Okay, one nod, thank God. Okay, I'm not in the wrong room. Okay, I'm not saying this happens all the time, but I'm saying digital transformation can be quite hard for people to understand, especially if they're on a board of a company and funding a digital transformation. One of the easiest ways that you can make them impressed with your digital transformation is to build things that are tangible, right? Digital transformation, the most tangible thing that you can build is something that's on their phone. And so where I was before Dataiku, I was part of a data team that was taken from all the different parts of the business, put together with some subject matter experts to surely we can make some money out of the data that we've got and digitally transform the automotive services industry that we were operating in. And when I joined that company about 5-6 years ago, as the first data scientist, on the second day I realized these people don't need data science yet. They've got a very nice front-end app that shows you very slickly some completely irrelevant data about cars. It was recommending that every car dealer in the country should go and buy as many Dacia Dusters as they possibly can, because the gap between what you buy them for wholesale and what you can sell them for retail was the biggest. And lo and behold, when you took that app to used car dealers, I don't know if you've ever met a used car dealer, they gave you some frank feedback. And I think this comes back to, if you think about how big is the total budget for doing data well in an organization, and compare that to the digital transformation budget in organizations, the data bit is often just a tiny drop in the bucket. I think when I've looked into this, when there's a publicly available data, the total spending on digital transformation can be tens and hundreds of millions, and the total spending on improving data capability is at least 10 times less than that. That doesn't matter as long as data has nothing to do with digital transformation, but the word digital and transforming something digitally kind of means taking a physical process, right? People, products, services, making it digital somehow, which means turning it into data and then doing stuff with that data. So if we keep spending hundreds of millions on apps that deliver disappointing results because the data inside them is garbage or not fit for purpose, there's another reason that I'll get to as well, which is even more challenging. Maybe we should reorient the budget, right? I would say that. I'm from the company that wants to help you do the other thing, but it might also just be a really good idea. If you ship apps, people don't use them, even if they look nice, what was all this transforming for anyway? So if I wind back a second and just summarize some useful kind of operational ways of thinking about what digital transformation actually is, you might start to see why data is often left out. So when I worked in business intelligence and data warehousing, we would always joke that when someone wants to build an application, the data requirements is page 500 of the requirements document, and that page is empty. We'll get to it at the end. If we're serious about digital transformation, it might need to be page 5. So why bother with all this digital transformation stuff? 3 kind of interlocking levels. If you look at organizations, the way organizations talk about this publicly is not shipping apps and spending money and building software. It's finding new ways to deliver value, not just to customers, but also to employees. So it's about new business models. When you think about people trying to do this to help teams work together, they say things like, teams are siloed, and we need silos to work better. Let's bust the silos, right? People in the digital space and data vendors have been saying that for 30 or 40 years, but maybe doing some things that actually reinforce those silos. So, and then if you even take it down to the individual level, what does it mean to digitally transform yourself? Well, we're not in the metaverse yet, so it probably just means developing new skills and capabilities, right, to take advantage of data and digital, to be a better part of a team, right, to change the way organizations generate value. Because is an organization going to generate a completely new business model out of the activities of just one team? Probably, that's probably going to be quite difficult. Someone probably already got there before. If you look at large, complex organizations, where will new business models come from? Where will new value come from? Combining the work of different teams together. You don't have to push very hard to then find that they have different data underneath, and now you might start to be sensing where I'm going with this. But, it's really hard. Google digital transformation failure, pick your favorite consultancy. Usually this doesn't work. So I think I've already told you one of my answers for why it might not work. The attention paid to data is often below what it should be because there are these incentives to do easier, more visible things as signs of progress of the digital transformation. But unless we're upgrading people's skills, making the people that we have in our organizations more able to do more kinds of work, unless we're joining teams together, not by just changing org charts, but by actually connecting their data and their tools to each other, then where is this new value going to come from? A lot of £100 million digital transformation projects are going to end up as sort of digitization failures where we used to do something in 2 systems, now we do it in 3 systems, right? At least for some of the cases. We never quite turn off the old thing, right? And so if you look at, there's more and more money coming into this, right? So part of me is like just saying spend less money on this, which is a crazy thing for a vendor to say at a conference, but spend it more wisely, right? Really understand from the failures that have had, from the successes that you've had, and no one volunteered a great success story yet. Most of them fall short of their goals in some way. And the typical way, if you think about if it's something about the employee experience, if this is a digital transformation to make your people more productive, sometimes that's even harder than making your customers buy stuff in a different way. Getting people to change the way they work is really, really difficult. And the obvious tie for data to this is just the garbage in, garbage out problem. So how many of you have been part of a digital transformation thing and you were about to launch that app, and then at the 11th hour, you discovered that the data didn't quite line up in exactly the right way? This guy's nodding. Okay, you're nodding. Okay. That happened. Why does that happen? How can that possibly happen? You, sir.
Because people don't look at the data that's there in enough integrity to understand what needs to be migrated across.
Yeah.
Transformation programs take a long time. By the time you've started the process, you're 2 years down the line and everything's reset. And
That's it.
Reevaluated it.
That's the other more interesting thing, is that in the process of transforming the process, you're also changing the data in ways that was also kind of the point of what you were doing, but there can be many unanticipated impacts. So it's not like 1999 and we're going from this ERP to this one and there's one big day where all the data goes across. It's like a good digital transformation is going to be iterative, agile, all those buzzwords. They're going to change even the old data in the process of generating new data. And now even being able to measure where you are in this process can be really confusing. If you then still insist on a big launch day where you pull the curtains aside and show the app, and you know, the team I was in got around this in a really bad way, right? So we got the app that we were building. You put in the number plate of any vehicle in the UK, and it was supposed to give you a bunch of pricing, sales kind of information. And it needed to be every vehicle in the UK, a response within 3 seconds across the type of car, the year it was built, the color, the area of the country, and just, you know, this is billions and trillions of potential answers, right, to be delivered in under 3 seconds. Guess how we solved the board level problem? Well, we knew their number plates of their cars, and then we realized we should also get the number plates of their spouses' cars, because those are the first ones that they're going to put in. So we manually validated that, you know, for the chief people officer, we knew that her husband's Jaguar was this number plate, and we made damn sure that the first time they saw it, they saw the right data. That's not very scalable, right? And that was a panic at the last moment before launch day, because it was really difficult as me, a data person in part of a digital transformation, saying, why are we spending so much time on the color of this button when we know that like Nissan Qashqais are just, the data we have on those is terrible? Well, we've got a deadline, and if anyone's got a Nissan Qashqai, we'll kind of hard code that answer in there. Okay. So this is not really about like the technology, the thing you built doesn't work. It's just that the ground shifted along the way. And the only way to know that is to be really mindful of how the data is changing out of what you're doing.
One of the reasons why things fail is because people are already up to their eyes with what they are doing.
Yeah.
So there's no capacity.
Yeah. What transformation program starts with, hey, everyone, take a breath, do less stuff, and then we'll do some transformation? It's usually, shit, we're underwater. Now transform, change the wings while we're flying the plane. And then that's why that, you know, thing that people in data warehousing used to complain about, data being page 500 of the requirements. You know, what we've just been talking about is really hard to solve. Of course it gets left later after the easier things, which is how do we even get the right people and how do we build something that shows progress? You know, solving the problems I'm talking about requires slowing down initially. So I told you about one kind of classic data quality problem. You know, maybe here's some examples that might get more of you nodding. So maybe the master list of products is inconsistent across the merged operations of 2 different chains. So large companies sometimes merge and split, and sometimes they sell different versions of the same thing, and they will never describe those things the same way. Employees sometimes have multiple employee IDs. Someone was a permanent member, then they came back as a contractor, then they were a consultant, and then they came back as a permanent member, right? How many people work for us? One of the hardest, you know, any company beyond about 100 people, how many people work for us? It's one of the most interesting questions to challenge them on. or customers are vanishing from our data, even though we strongly suspect that they're still buying because they're not logged into their cart, right? Or they switched to buying things physically when they used to buy things digitally. So those things, that's just like how the world works, and those things need to be, planned for, not as an afterthought. So let's see how it's typically tackled. Oh, the data quality is terrible in these separate systems. Let's do a cleanse. The first time I heard the phrase data cleanse was in the middle of one of these things, and this idea that you put enough people with enough spreadsheets in a room and they can fix it once for launch day. And then the outcome is initially successful transformation. The cars that people will type in are going to be right until they just look out the window and type in some other car, and it might be wrong. But transformation is about changing the process, right? So basically you launch on day one, everything's fine. And then one thing changes about the world and it all starts to crumble. The funny thing is that there's a different group of people who may or may not be connected to the digital transformation effort who are actually working on the exact same problem day in and day out. They're in some kind of data team, reporting team. They have the exact same problem. And they've actually, because those people hate to solve those problems over and over again, those people hate to, I became a data person because I was given 2 spreadsheets to compare 20 years ago, and I did it once and I said, I'm never going to do that again by hand. So I learned how to do all this stuff, right? And to make that responsive over time. That's really good, but they keep that solution to themselves. If they're not part of the digital transformation thing, if they're not connected, they may not even know that there is a digital transformation program going on where data quality could be the thing that kills it. Meanwhile, they've got a very good solution to it that runs all the time, because these are the people who have to report on how many products do we sell across those 2 inconsistent list of products. They've worked out an answer, which might be a good enough starting point. So it's a classic case of, and then the most perverse thing is that the ultimate stakeholder of both groups could even be the same person. It could be the same person paying ultimately for the data team and for the digital transformation. And they have no way of knowing that the 2 different mindsets to go after this problem are both being paid to solve it in different ways that don't connect up. And that actually one person's mindset, one group's mindset, was the solution to the other person's, the other group's problem. You might guess that, put these things together. Has anyone tried to moderate a discussion between these kinds of people? Anyone, let's put them in the same org. Let's get a chief digital and data officer and do some PowerPoint rearrangement. Anyone tried to get these people talking to each other? How does that go?
I think if you have a CDO type role that is undefined, so I often see businesses bring in CDOs and don't actually know what a CDO is supposed to be doing, what skills they need to have, or how they're going to pull these 2 teams together and have a common language that works in business.
Yeah.
I'd replace CDO with any role.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of quick organizational fixes. From my experience, these people operate on very different timescales, different ways of thinking about the world, different lines of accountability. Too much to do, not enough time, to your point. So just telling them to share more, right, or putting them under the same part of the organizational ladder actually does the opposite thing, right? So when we talk to people about, hey, why don't you make more out of the data that you have using machine learning and AI, which is what we help them do, they say, well, we had a failed digital transformation, and so we need to once again put all of the data in one platform in a 5-year data transformation program, and then we'll do some interesting stuff with it. Right, so one side, the smart people on one side of it can use the problem on the other side to justify a way of working that guarantees that this is reproducibility, reproduced. And then on the digital side, what I saw happen was, hey, data team, you can't give us the exact right thing within a day that you never told us about. If you told us a week earlier, we could have delivered this thing to solve that problem forever, but you told us the day before launch day, and we said, ugh. So we went to some consultancy to clean up our data for us, which is just paying for a different way to get this. So if these people don't talk to each other, not only will things fail, everyone will spend more money on keeping them further apart. And that just makes the future harder. So obvious answer, easy for me to put on a slide. What if you did it? What if you did it together? But it means that digital transformation people need to think about transformation as a continuous process, right? As soon as they start using that language, the data people are going to go, oh, that sounds like something we already do. Can we work together on solving that problem jointly? Likewise, if the data people step down off their sometimes high horses about being perfectionists and really nasty and difficult people to talk to sometimes, who like to be sometimes in their little black box away from the business, right? They might actually get more work satisfaction if the stuff that they did was used to generate more business value out there and actually impact the customer in some way. So to my point about the relative sizes of the budget, it's not the right metaphor, but here's two things that are kind of similar animals. I don't know if dolphins and whales are actually symbiotic, but a symbiotic relationship, right, is what's going to work here. Trying to turn the dolphin into a whale or have the dolphin eat the whale or the whale eat the dolphin, right? Any kind of blunt kind of, why don't you just be the same thing? Actually, even my example, these kinds of mindsets are good at different kinds of things. One is a lot better at thinking about what the customer wants, and one is good at solving data problems in continuous time forever. So they don't only reduce the risk of failure, they actually help increase each other's ROI. In the remaining time, I'll just share a couple of examples from a few of our customers that maybe tell you a bit about how Dataiku helps this happen. So when we used to fly, well, we fly again now, chances are half the time you're powered by a G aviation engine, and building engines is expensive, and improving engines when fuel costs are a little bit more than they used to be, that's quite expensive, and there aren't as many aerospace engineers as there used to be, and they are retiring at an increasing rate. And the way that you do the modeling, right, to understand if we change the materials in that engine blade, the way that you understand is that good for engine efficiency is to do computational fluid dynamics, which is something that, where's the person from the oil and gas company, probably knows more about than me. That's a very heavyweight thing to do, right? Solved a long time ago. You used to need big computers. You still need big computers to do that. What John and his colleagues realized was, well, let's not ship those kinds of engineering problems to a data science team. Let's give engineers some tools that allow them not to change the way that they understand the best final model, right? For regulatory purposes, and because you're going to build engines out of it, that does need to be the big heavy thing. But can we use something to rapidly discount really bad designs? And when they started to do that, the engineering time required to iterate through the many different versions of the design that you need to get to the answer, was drastically increased. Now, this is the kind of transformation that is long and slow and iterative and cumulative. This is not replace the engine designer with an AI. That is not transformation. That's just destruction, right? This is, and then in the backdrop of, it's really hard to find super skilled data people who also happen to understand jet engines, right? So one of the solutions here to bring these groups together is to take the people who have close to the skills that you already do and help change the way that they work, right? In the end, this transformed how GE even designed the engines that we fly on. But it's not, when they released the first engine designed this way, it's not like everyone went home. They can then capitalize that new way of working to continue finding new improvements. Another manufacturing company, I think it's just our manufacturing customers that have some of the best stories here because the amount of money and the time that they save is the biggest. So Adnan works for NXP, one of the biggest semiconductor companies that makes half of what's in all the equipment in the room. He's a manufacturing quality engineer, pretty much the same story. There's a set of techniques that he learned at university that field has used for a very long time. Right? But this is the same whether you're in marketing, sales, human relations, anything. There's a set of techniques that you know and love well. And then the trick of making more out of your data along the way to transformation is, how do you get these people to do something drastically different, but where they actually do that themselves? So another reason transformation fails is that people hate that happening to them, right? How do you make people actually improve things along the way themselves? There was something like 200 million annual cost savings from increasing the time to detect a manufacturing issue on their production line. He was already doing that and already knew how to do it. The missing piece was just a slightly different way of working with data. He didn't need a big app, he didn't need a big system, just one person and a team of 2 other people using a small piece of software to approach the problem in a slightly different way. And then Schlumberger is a customer of ours. I think I'm in the right part of the country to mention oil and gas. And they started off doing machine learning and AI on oil and gas things, wells, you know. And then their people director was at an internal conference and heard the spiel about what they'd done and realized, wait a minute, that kind of sounds like the same shape of problem that I have. And so they now use Dataiku to stream incoming job applicants. Again, not to automatically decide who gets the job or not. That can be a little bit risky with AI. But simply, when someone applies from a given country to a job in a different particular country, how do you just put that in the right queue? You know, and the speed up that you get in a process, the resource saving that you get in a process, the same with the unemployment agency in France. Just directing the work to the right person, it's not very sexy, it's not, maybe does that word deserve the word transformation, but actually what that unlocks in terms of the time that people can then spend on other things can be quite remarkable. So I think those examples show that the less grandiose we make digital transformation, the more successful it's likely to be, and the easier it is probably for data to contribute in a meaningful way. If we set 100 million big launch day goals, and then we get data teams involved at the last minute on that data cleanse, you know, things aren't going to get better. So, but this is not how people are funding digital transformation today, right? They get a big budget and a time span, and they need to spend the budget, right? Is there a way to spend it differently, though, more organically, to develop some of these underlying capabilities, and then see what apps, then see what experiences unfold from that? You probably hear from everyone else in the conference. It's not just about technology change. That is actually the easier thing compared to 5-10 years ago. Like, to build an app now, there's a bunch of things we could almost do that on our phone. That used to be really complicated. That excuse has sort of gone. Now what the app is supposed to be doing is actually the real question. And this once and done mentality. Now, we shipped one version of the app, and now we're good. I've talked a lot about why digital transformations fail. One of the biggest untapped opportunities of digital transformation is, having transformed a process to become more digital, you can now measure many more things. One of the most unfortunate things that happens is, to compare the new world to the old world, people take the new world from the digitally transformed future, they squash all of that interesting new detail to make it look like the report from 2005. So where will the next ideas for the people like John and Anand come from? If we transformed to make something better, we generated a bunch more interesting data, and then we just killed that data so that we could measure ourselves against the old process. So that's the untapped opportunity that's out there. All of your transformations are not just solving the problem in front of you, but they're generating, the solutions to problems that you haven't even met yet. So if you want to read more about that topic, you can find it there. Then we will send you other emails about other things which you can subscribe to or unsubscribe. But we're here all day upstairs. Come and talk to us about this or any other topic. Thanks for the nods. Thanks for the audience participation. That always helps me up here. And have a nice lunch, I think. Yeah. Thanks.